Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our May 27, 2025 regular Board of Directors meeting. Thank you to those attending in person, watching over Zoom, as well as those who will watch our recording at a later time. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak during community comment, they will need to fill out a speaker form located in the lobby on the table and turn it in to Board Secretary Kim Coven, seated at the end of the table on my left. Comments will take place during the designated community comment portion of our agenda. And before we dive into tonight's agenda, I want to take a moment to introduce those seated at the table with me. To my right, we have Superintendent Degner, Directors Eystone, Eastham, and Williams. I'm President Malone. To my left, we have Vice President Abraham, Directors Finch and Lingo, and Board Secretary Coven. And first item on our agenda will be the Education Showcase. I don't know if Kristen or someone will introduce our visitors from Penn Elementary tonight.
Yes, thanks, President Malone. So tonight we have Penn Elementary announcement leaders here to share a little bit with us about what they do at Penn Elementary. Principal Brandon's there in the back coming forward with a few of the students, and we'll turn it over to them.
All right. Good evening. My name is David Brandon. I'm the principal at Penn Elementary, and I get the wonderful opportunity to come tonight with these three girls that are going to represent our school announcement leaders. And before they get started, I just wanted to thank you all as well for all that you do for our school district. I know you have big roles and not everybody sees it, so I just want to start up by giving you a thank you. And with that, I'll turn it over to our three student representatives here.
Hi, I'm Nina Fullman.
Hi, I'm May Schumann.
Hi, I'm Kate Kincher. And we are here to represent the announcement leaders. There are lots of us in the announcement leaders, and we come on assigned days to do our videos in the mornings.
Some of our favorite parts of announcement leaders are meeting new friends, seeing the after product of our hard work, and being in front of others.
While we do the announcements, we learn skills like public speaking, building confidence, how to be a leader to the younger grades, creativity, and news reporting and technology.
You ready for it? Sample of one of their videos that they wanted to show this is what they produce each day for our students in our school.
Good morning, Panthers. Today is Wednesday, May 14th, 2025. It is the birthday of school. It is track and field day for our 4th and 5th graders. Good luck, Panthers! Ow. Great job, 3rd and 4th and 5th grade, on your musical performance last night. We don't have any birthdays to announce, but we do want to make sure everyone is doing their best to end the school year in the best way they are. There are only 17 school days left. Wow! Oh my gosh.
Wow, that's crazy. Regular lunch is an Italian pasta bake. Alternate lunch is a cheese quesadilla pizza. We are going to send it over to Nina for the weather.
Thanks, guys. Those clouds that rolled in yesterday are going to stick around today. They may even get thicker. It's also only going to get warmer. We can expect a high of 87 today. Wow, that is going to feel hot. I hope that all the track and field kids brought lots of water and wore their sunscreen. I'm going to send it over to Kate for the Bolt Report.
Thanks, Nina. Today, the Bolts boys tennis team has a singles and doubles tournament at City High. The Bolts girls soccer team traveled to CCA tonight for their match. The Bolts baseball team has their home opener tonight against Regina. Good luck, Bolts. Stay tuned to hear from our Panthers on the prowl.
Today I'm here with Hillary and Finley from 3L and 3B, and today I'm going to be asking them what
what is the best track and field event? Long jump. And long jump and soccer. Thank you. Eric. Savannah. Ethan. Rum. 40. And what's the best track and field event? Fire walker. Hurdles. Thank you. I'm here with Hudson and Luke from 5B and 5BB. And what's the best track and field event? Hurdles. The 300. Thank you.
I'm here with Bryn and Thomas.
From 1 hour and 1 hour. And what is your favorite track and field event? Building up the highest. And hurdles. Thank you. Here with Arya.
And Rosabelle from 2G and 2G. And today I'm going to be asking them what is the best track and field event.
And foxtails. Thank you. With Arya and Piper from KH and KM. And I'm going to be asking them what's their favorite track and field event. Long jump. And tug of war. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. That's all for the news today. It's now time for the pledge. Have a great day, Penn Panthers! Good morning, Penn Panthers. Today is Wednesday, May 14th, 2020.
Thank you to our ICCSD Foundation for funding our teleprompter, iPad, and microphone.
The teleprompter helps with what we have to say, our script. We used to have a big whiteboard that we would have to rewrite the script every morning, and they bought us a teleprompter, and it shows us everything that we need to say.
While we're reporting around the school and asking kids questions, the iPad helps to record the questions we ask. The microphone helps us hear the students we interview. We used to have to talk really loud before we had the microphone.
Let's give them another round of applause. Thank you for coming to share with us tonight. That was really, I was impressed because I didn't get to do that until I got to high school. So clearly they didn't trust me and didn't give me the skills I needed. So very impressive. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, we will go into community comment. Thank you for your interest in the Iowa City Community School District and for your willingness to share your comments. You are reminded to give your name, address, and topic on which you plan to speak about. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. Speakers who make comments are reminded they are responsible for their own statements and may be subject to legal action for those which include hate speech and that are threatening, harassing, or defamatory in nature. It is expected that speakers will address the board and each other with civility and abide by the stated time limits. All community comment directed at non-agenda items and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting and will be limited to 4 minutes per speaker and 5 minutes for speaker who has the assistance of an interpreter. Speaker's time limit will be displayed on the screen above Board Secretary Kim Coven on my left. The initial community comment period shall be limited to 1 hour. Remaining community comment, to the extent necessary, shall take place at the end of the meeting. The board will not engage in any discussion during public comment. The role of the board during this time is to listen. Any individual who does not abide by these rules or otherwise disrupt the meeting may be asked to leave and/or referred to law enforcement. And our first speaker for tonight is Amanda Pitts.
Good evening.
My name's Amanda Pitts. I'm a parent of two kids at Christine Grant Elementary. And I'm here tonight to voice deep frustration and concern, not just my own, but that of many parents in the district, regarding the escalating and unchecked disruptive behavior in our classrooms and on the playgrounds. This year, my child has been repeatedly subjected to incidences of physical aggression by another student. She has had objects thrown at her, and she's seen her peers kicked, punched, spit on, and hit. These are not isolated events. This is a pattern, and this is the environment our children are being forced to endure every single day. I personally witnessed this behavior while on a field trip. This student attempted to strike me unprovoked over the head with a skateboard. She didn't strike me because I saw her coming. I was able to grab it. But I want you to think about that. I was chaperoning my child on her field trip, and I was almost assaulted by one of your students for no reason. This is beyond unacceptable, it's dangerous, and the lack of meaningful response from this board is inexcusable. Of these 7 elected members sitting here today, there have been 2 that had the decency to respond to our email and the concerns we raised as parents. The silence from the rest of you speaks volumes. It either suggests you're unaware of the severity of the situation or you're unwilling to confront it, and neither is okay. These issues are not unique to Christine Grant. They are happening across the district. They are happening to teachers. They are being physically, emotionally drained, and they're being left without support, and their safety is being compromised, and your failure to act is why it's continuing. By refusing to intervene, you are failing every child involved. You are failing the student who is acting out by not providing intervention, structure, and accountability, and you're also failing children like mine, who are being traumatized and harmed in the classroom day after day, and you are failing the educators who are expected to manage all of this while trying to teach a classroom that no longer feels safe to our students. Doing nothing is not neutral. No, it's harmful. Your inaction tells children like mine that they must silently accept the abuse and trauma as part of going to school. And it tells the children exhibiting the violent behavior that there are no boundaries, no consequences, and no path to change. That is not education, that is negligence. We are demanding action immediately for the safety of our children, for the protection of our teacher, and the integrity of our schools. As elected officials, you are accountable to the students, staff, and families of this community, and it's time to start acting like it. I want to leave you with something that my daughter said to me recently. She came home from school, and she said, "Mom, I had a good day at school." And I asked her why. Why did you have a good day at school? And she said because the student who's been having these behaviors fell asleep in the calm corner, so she couldn't hurt me and my friends. That's what a good day looked like to my kindergartner. That her perpetrator, the student who has repetitively harmed other students in the classroom, fell asleep, and that is why she had a good day. If that doesn't break your heart or spur you to act, I honestly don't know what will. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up will be Doug Kendrick, and my apologies, our new system, the time will not display over Kim's head. Oh, it's not tonight, my apologies.
Hello, my name is Doug Kendrick. I'm a resident of Johnson County. I live just outside North Liberty. I'm a parent of 2 students at Christine Grant Elementary School. I'm here to express my deep concerns and disappointment regarding the actions of the ICCSD regarding the ongoing violence and bullying occurring to my child and his classmates while attending kindergarten. Our children have been the subjects of physical assault and bullying throughout the school year, ranging from pushing, throwing objects, hitting, kicking, punching, and spitting. Not only have these actions continued throughout the year, but it would appear that the school has failed to appropriately report and address these incidents. On May 2nd of this month, my son was assaulted in the cafeteria when he was punched in the abdomen by another student, causing emotional and physical injury. The offending student was taken to the principal's office. However, no support was given to my crying son, and we have yet to receive notification from the school administration regarding the assault. This lack of transparency and the failure to follow reporting procedures undermines the trust parents place in the school to ensure the safety and well-being of our children. In isolation, this could be taken as a young child having difficulties controlling emotions. However, actions like this have occurred throughout the school year from multiple students. The consequence, or the consistent pattern of violence in the classroom and the district's inadequate response to the classroom violence shows that either the protocols in place are not being followed, there's insufficient training on reporting school violence, or the policies are inadequate. These concerns have been communicated to the school, superintendent, and other key personnel, only to receive rather generic responses with no clear plan of action. These continuing acts and lack of action from the district have required an escalating response by the parents of these young children. Schools have a moral and legal obligation to maintain a safe environment and reasonably protect students from harm. The U.S. Department of Education Guiding Principles for Creating a Safe, Inclusive, Supportive, and Fair School Climate states that schools should foster a safe school environment and support the emotional, physical, and mental health of all students. Iowa Code 279.519A requires that the principal be notified of any incident of violence within 24 hours and that principal then notifies the parents within 24 hours. Furthermore, policies must provide for escalating levels of discipline each time a student makes a threat of violence or causes an incident of violence. This code also states that a student may be removed from the class and placed in alternate learning environments. I understand that schools face complex behavioral situations. However, it is the responsibility of the school to address incidents of bullying and assault in a meaningful manner that prioritizes student safety, ensures accountability, involves parents in safeguarding their children. The failure to support incidents such as these not only neglect these responsibilities, but also raises serious concerns about how other similar situations may be handled. No child should ever feel unsafe at school, and no parent should have to worry that their child may be harmed while at school. Considering the number of acts of bullying and assault and the time frame in which they have occurred, it would be reasonable to say that any future acts would be considered foreseeable and would seem to show that the district is failing to address these foreseeable dangers. Unwillingness of the district to rectify this situation may be a proximate cause of any future injuries that our child may sustain. I ask that the school board take immediate action on the following. Review the policies and procedures regarding the reporting of incidents involving physical harm to see if they are being followed and need modified. Ensure that all staff members are adequately trained to adhere to these protocols. It appears that some staff have minimal to no training. Implement a safety plan to keep my child and his classmates safe both now and in the future. Arrange a meeting to discuss the matter further, as it's crucial for parents to feel assured that their children are in a safe and supportive environment at school. I urge you to take this matter seriously and respond within 30 days with a clear, measurable action that reflects the district's commitment to student safety. Thank you for your attention in this urgent matter.
Thank you. Next up, approval for tonight's agenda. Is there a motion?
Move to approve the agenda for tonight.
Seconded.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
I'm a yes, Kim.
Give I'm a yea vote.
Thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Before we get to tonight's consent agenda, were there any items from directors who reviewed the bills for this cycle? Hearing none, are there any items that directors would like to pull from tonight's consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is our public hearing for the amended 2024-25 certified budget.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the district's proposed fiscal year 2025 certified budget amendment. Notice of the public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on May 17th, 2025. Are there any comments from the board? Is there anyone in the community that would like to advise or provide comments to the board on the proposed fiscal year 2025 budget amendment?
Okay. I will close that public hearing and move on to committee reports. Our Education Committee, Director Eastham, do you have a report? you'd
Thank
like
you,
to
President
give?
Malone. I just have a few comments. The Education Committee, which for the public's understanding is the committee of the full board, met last week and heard a presentation from teachers at Lucas and other schools regarding their plans to implement a team teaching approach in elementary schools, starting with pilot projects in several elementary schools next year. And I just would like to take a moment to read the presentation, something from the presentation that describes what the teachers are actually planning on doing. But first, I want to say that the reason that the teachers are implementing this change in the teaching methods is because for a long time we've known in the district that our academic achievement results for a number of students, especially students of color in the district, are not what we want them to be and what students want them to be and what the students' parents want them to be. So teachers have decided that they're going to try a different method of teaching in large part in order to improve our academic achievement for all students. And in describing what they're doing, the teachers wrote that student growth and achievement soar when educators team teach together with purpose. Focused instruction in subject areas allow teachers to hone their craft and create consistent, high quality, and innovative learning experiences for all students. With collaborative teaching, shared responsibility, data-driven strategies within a culture of wellness, teachers feel supported to be confident, effective educators leading to better outcomes and new opportunities for students to be empowered and successful. I would say that we were I was very pleased as a board member to hear what the teachers are planning on doing. I was really encouraged by the fact that teachers had formed study groups to decide what to do and how to do it and work together in this process of formulating a new, another better approach to teaching. And there were, I think, 10 or 12 teachers at this meeting, all of who spoke very enthusiastically about this idea and are looking forward to having a result starting next year. If there are comments from other board members, they may want to make them.
If any other board members have any comments? All right, thank you, Director Eastham. Next up is our policy review, and we have several listed, so I will turn it over to Director Williams.
Thank you. Yeah, quite a bit of work today in P&G. This is the first read for everything, so we're not voting on any of these tonight. The 800 series was mainly name changes and some verbiage to align us with some new state law. Same with the 900 series. So I'm going to breeze through those. I will note to the directors, our admin team is working on changing the fee schedule that's embedded within the 900 series. And so we anticipate seeing that fee schedule back in front of us in the near future again. But that's why you'll see the 900 series twice. The Meteor work are the rest of the policies that are on there. And maybe I'll do an overview and are we going to discuss them now? Or
Sure.
Can we do that? I don't know. So 203R1 responsibilities of the board. This is an attempt to codify the current practice of how and when board members are asked to sit in on meetings with the admin team. The draft that we have on Diligent is the administration's first stab at putting together what currently takes place. But everyone is certainly open to amendments. One of the things that we talked about at P&G that we're going to add in here is following the informal meeting, a meeting summary will be circulated. The superintendent is going to be responsible for creating that meeting summary, if that's kind of okay with the seven of us. Because we figured the superintendent would always be at that meeting, so he'll be the consistent person there. So we're going to add that language change in. One of the things we talked about at P&G was that 203R1 really only applies to a certain subset of meetings, and I just think it's important that we're all on the same page with that, and it's meetings about student discipline, harassment or discrimination against a student or employee, or an employee personnel issue. I think all seven of us have times when people from the community come and approach us and they want to talk to us about something that is concerning to them. And I didn't want our ability to interact with the community to be limited by this policy. I think as elected officials, it's kind of our job to hear from the community. And so my read of this, the intent of this policy is not to limit our ability to interact with our constituents, except if it is a concern about one of these three things. But that's just me. I think that we should have a discussion or just make sure that we all have that same understanding of the policy, or if that's not what we intend to do, then we need to write it differently. But I think it's important, and so I wanted to flag that. I think all seven of us should be on the same page as to the scope and breadth of what this policy speaks to. So that's, I think, one thing that we should talk about. 210 is actually maybe pretty easier. That's our regular meetings, and I think that Superintendent Degner and maybe President Malone has checked in individually with the seven of us. But we are going to, the proposal is that we would amend 210.2 to remove the second November meeting from the calendar. That meeting is held the Tuesday before Thanksgiving break. And it's a lot of our administrative team, perhaps board members, but really the people that are in the audience. It's a tough meeting, I think. Sometimes people want to travel and leave town for the long holiday, and having that board meeting on Tuesday can complicate those travel plans, especially because the district is out of school on Wednesday, and so they can't get on the road maybe on Tuesday because they have to stick for a board meeting. That's typically our organizational meeting, but what would happen is the organizational meeting just has to be the first meeting after the election is certified. And so that would push that organizational meeting to our December meeting. And Kim and the team has looked into the policy to make sure that we didn't have to make any other tweaks, and it doesn't look like we do. So that's what 210.2, as loaded in Diligent Community, proposes. P&G is also proposing an additional amendment to remove also the second June meeting from our regularly scheduled meetings. Yes?
No, just
Okay.
quick, like.
Permanently.
Okay, that is not what I thought we were doing. I thought it was for this year, and then we were gonna talk down the line for permanent.
I think we talked both tonight. So if the board's not comfortable with that, of course, we can do whatever the board would like to see. I think this year, like many years, that second June meeting generally doesn't have a lot of content either. And I don't want to take words away from Director Williams, but P&G also talked about, of course, if a need presents, we're also always able to schedule an additional summer meeting. The idea would be that we wouldn't have the second June meeting this year, and then consider that you'd have one June meeting annually, you'd have one July meeting and one November meeting. So that is what the conversation at P&G was, and then I think that's why Director Williams is sharing that this evening in case there were strong feelings about that moving forward. But there's no proposed language on it yet, but that would be the idea to come back with.
And if there are strong feelings, we can keep the June meeting. But as Superintendent, the four of us that were at the table kind of agreed that it was usually a light meeting. And again, it kind of gives the administrative staff a break from, as ICA President Schutz said, a break from the board.
We did not say that.
Thank
No,
you,
that's why I called out
President
Brady,
Schutt.
because you would never want to break from us.
So, and I know directors had concerns. We just want to make sure that doesn't compromise the business of the district, because I know that would mean we would have to get all of our year-end fiscal year closing for accounting and payroll and HR done that first June meeting. So as long as they can make that work, I'm fine. No strong feelings.
And again, if something happened,
Yeah.
I think I know that the intent would be to not let the business slide, but instead special set a meeting for that June. As a special set meeting, it wouldn't have to have as many agenda items, which means as many people wouldn't be required to attend. So it would be an easier carry, I think, for the team. But that was a proposal that we would then say amend how it's written now and bring that back for in final form for the full vote. 704.4 is on there. There was just some legal cleanup language to kind of tighten the language about the relationship between the district and the foundation, and how gifts and bequests are given. And then 416, there's a whole series of these are all brand new policies, the 416s. And just so that the directors know, the intent with the 416s, if we take the June meeting off this year, separate and apart from the policy, the intent would be to have a P&G meeting in July, which we normally don't do. But the administrative team would like to get the 416s voted on and in place at our July meeting, so that they are there for our new employees who are coming in August and set to go. So there's a lot of stuff going on with the 416s, and I don't know if Deputy Superintendent Ramey wants to kind of you gave us a nice overview at P&G about the 416s and why we need them. But the intent is not to vote on them on June. We're still going to have a whole month for those to work through and talk about language.
Good evening. The intent of 416 is really just to provide some clarity both for employees that find themselves serving in extra service contract positions, and also provide that same kind of clarity and additional protection for the district. Our extra service individuals sometimes have another contract with the district, either as a certified employee or a support staff employee, but others are community members that want to give back and participate. And so serving in a coach or a sponsor role, it might be the only thing they do for the district. And we believe that having this set of policies lets us identify some things that are specific needs for these individuals, both also on a responsibility, opportunity, and accountability perspectives that we haven't had. Now, they've always been subject to all of our board policies, but this allows for another layer of specificity for this group of individuals that was lacking. And again, I think it goes back to that clarity so that everyone knows their expectations and the rules of employment when they're working with students and with other staff members inside the school district.
So that's a summary, and I would say if we want to discuss now would be a good time.
Any directors have comments? Jump right in.
Oh, sure. I think what I would plan would be to come to, thank you for that summary, Director Williams. But I think my plan would be to come to the July P&G meeting, because I think that just is a more conducive setting to discuss these types of things. But I think our community comment tonight really illustrates how problematic this new 200.3R1 policy could be. Concerns gone unaddressed or unacknowledged only fester and escalate. So I want to be clear about what this policy means right now. For me, it seems like a red flag of shutting down communication. And maybe that's not the intent, but my plan would be just to come to the July P&G meeting to have a more deeper, in-depth discussion on it.
Thank you, Director Williams, for a very nice summary. Following up on Director Finch's comments about 203.3R1, responsibilities of the Board of Directors, that paragraph refers to specific circumstances under which board members may be asked to participate in a discussion about certain aspects of being a student in the district. And I would welcome an additional conversation about whether or not it meets, it's able to meet our aspirations for addressing situations in the district that we would like to address.
I would thank you, Director Williams, for your information. Sorry, I lost my word that I was gonna have, but I would also like to reinforce Director Finch's view, and if we could get any sort of advice from maybe IASB on this policy, because even in the 203, I can't find it right now. It's one of those times that you just start moving around and you have a thought, but it says that we also need information to evaluate, right? And if people have done their but did their due diligence by meeting with all these people throughout the process, and then if they reach the superintendent and they don't see what they believe should be seen, who are they supposed to go to then? And that's always kind of, that's what's there in my mind, and wanting to make sure that we're not putting some sort of, we can agree as this board, the way we view it, but future boards and how that might create a chilling environment for those kind of discussions and families and employees and other groups to come to board members with their concerns.
The last thing I want to do is to create an environment where a parent feels that they can't reach out to the board. I think that's a very dangerous precedent to set. Personally.
I absolutely agree with the sentiment from the two of you. I do think, and maybe this is where we need to kind of clean up some language, because I think the intent here is a more formalized meeting between a parent or student or whoever with members of the administrative team. Would also want board members to be present in that meeting. So a very formalized thing. I mean, well, it's informal, but it's a more official thing that it's been requested that board members join that meeting. How do we decide, because all 7 of us can't go? I think that's what it's trying to illustrate, as opposed to guiding all contact between board members and folks. But to your point, I think maybe we can look at the language, make sure that the intent is much more clear. And maybe we even need to be more explicit as to what is okay outside of this scope. Like, when is it okay for folks to just talk to people?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because even that aspect of the policy, I think is problematic, because I don't necessarily think that the first person to respond to an email is maybe the ideal person to have at that meeting. And so maybe we can use some common sense about who is the best person to be present at some of these meetings based on their professional experience or expertise or relationships, whatnot. But yeah, but I'm happy to leave it to July and discuss further then.
And the good thing with this 203R1 is there's no time. We have plenty of time to work on this policy and get it right. So it will be on the July meeting, but we can come back to that in August. Like, I think the only time constraint one is we have the 413s. So I would say if anybody has strong feelings about the 413s, that they want to really change some language at the July meeting, maybe try to give myself or Deputy Superintendent Ramey a heads up ahead of time, and so that they can work some of that language out, because you did want to vote on those.
The 416s.
The 416s at the July meeting.
That would be our preference.
But the 203R1, I think, and then to me, it's a pretty significant policy, so we should probably take our time to make sure that if we do want to pass it, we get the language correct.
I would add, we did discuss if this is kind of taken in a vacuum, right? The R1 all by itself. If you want to go and review it and look at the language, I recommend looking at the 200.3, the previous parent policy, because it has some language in there that is then kind of moved into this as well. So kind of take that as a whole thing as we look at it.
One more question, Director Williams. I was eavesdropping in the back while you guys were, while the P&G was meeting. There was some sort of mention of a coach's code of conduct or something like that. Was that in this policy, or was that for future? I just thought it was interesting.
Sure, it's embedded in the 416s. It's something that Nick and Lucas have been working on with our secondary principals and our ADs. Thank you for mentioning that, Director Lingo. And so that's one of the things we also wanted to incorporate into board policy. We have a student code of conduct for students that participate in extracurricular activities, and we believe it makes sense to hold the adults that are leading those activities to the same or even a higher standard than the students they're serving. And to date, we hadn't had something like that in place. This is going to help us change that throughout the district.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So next meeting, we'll vote on the 800s, the 900s, that 700 for, and the meeting schedule change would be the intent. The one that we kind of haven't talked about yet from this table is the did anybody have heartburn with removing the 2nd November meeting and the 2nd June meeting?
No.
Okay. Then that's what the directors will see at our next meeting is those 4 policies as action items, and then the 200, 3R1, and the 416s will be at the July meeting.
Thank you. Next up is our discussion item, which is the negotiations review. And will that be?
I'll open it, and then I think Adam and Nick are just going to talk from the table there. But later in the agenda, you're going to have some agreements that we're asking for your approval on, and a couple directors had an idea about a brief overview prior to the approval of that, not only for your purposes, but also for the public's. And so Nick's going to talk from the HR perspective with the negotiations process, and then Adam's just going to talk tonight without any slides or formal presentation, just about budget impact and how we accounted for that before and after the settlements.
Thank you, Superintendent Degner, and good evening, Board. We had a very successful negotiation season working with our various groups, our nutrition services, our paraprofessionals, teachers, physical plant, and secretaries. We're excited about the work there. Many of our groups were able to have some nice increases, positive increases to their compensation, trying to do some things with some of the different groups related to keeping up with market value and continuing to allow our principals and other hiring managers to be able to hire high quality individuals for those roles. We've also added some additional benefits, some creative ones that we're happy with related to kind of a complex case situation for our paraprofessionals where they can get a little differential for those who are working with some of our students who have some of the most need within our system and trying to support them. Also some differential for our secretaries who speak another language. We think that's another real positive thing for our community. The statewide $50,000 minimum for teachers was in place, so that's another positive change for teachers. So in a response to that, we also tried to do some things for retention of our more veteran teachers and add some bonuses there for those who had been in our district for 20 and 25 years. So we feel really good about our negotiations. We had a very positive experience again with Brady Shutt and the various groups as we worked through them, and thank you to Director Williams and Director Eastham for your participation as well. It was a good collaborative process. We continue to, I think, lead the way in the state in regards to how we're able to interact with our different groups and how we're able to end in a very positive and collaborative outcome. So I feel really good about the work that we did, and thank you again to everyone who was involved in that process.
And I will just jump in and share a little bit about the budget side. So we went into negotiations. We really tried to rely upon the same budget projections we've been giving the board over the past 6 months in terms of what we expect and what we plan for our budget growth to be into next year. And so the settlement packages that we arrived at align really closely and did not exceed those targets. So as we look at the budget impact based upon what's already been shared with the board, we're right in line with where we wanted to be in that regard.
Thank you. Any questions?
President Malone, could I?
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm Brady Shepp from the Iowa City Education Association. I just want to do just a couple of thank yous on behalf of all the local associations. So to Superintendent Degner and Deputy Superintendent Ramey for their continued partnership. Adam Kurth, our Chief Financial Officer, and his team in the business office. We have a very strong level of trust with CFO Kurth, and we certainly rely on his expertise as we prepare for negotiating and then conduct the sessions. I also want to extend a public thank you to Lindsay Detra in our HR department. I think Nick and I would both tell you that negotiating is one thing, and then implementing what we actually decide on, it's a whole different world, and Lindsay magically makes that happen. It's a massive amount of work. She does a tremendous job every year in making those things a reality. Of course, a special thank you to the district's Chief Negotiator, Nick Proud, for his outstanding leadership in our district and his continued collaboration throughout the year and certainly during the negotiation season. And then thank you to all of you, the school board, for your continued support and your advocacy for public education, and our employees, particularly for our classified employees this year. The response has been overwhelmingly positive. So I really thank you on their behalf. Special thank you to Director Lisa Williams and Director Charlie Easton for serving on some of the teams on behalf of the district. I'd say we do many things in ICCSD well. Better than most districts in most of those things. But at the top of the list of things we do well is negotiating. So just I'd say the thanks to everybody who's involved in that process. I think if you read the papers or watch the news, you can see how it can go sideways very quickly, and it does do that often in other districts. So I have a great amount of pride in the work that all of us do to make the negotiations process successful. So thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Next up, we move on to our presentations for tonight, and the first one is the Iowa School Performance Profile presentation. As they set up, Superintendent Degner, did you want to open it up for us?
You bet I will, and we'll ask Principal Cox and Principal Miller to come up to the front here along with Eliza and Lucas. We're going to follow up with you on some of the work that's happened this year with Iowa School Performance Profiles. You remember we presented some of the results to you, or the results to you, late this fall and early winter, and so our building teams have been heavily involved in that work throughout the school year, and so we're excited to share some of that progress with you and a couple building specific examples here this evening. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lucas.
Thank you, Superintendent Degner and the board. Appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you again tonight. Eliza and I will kind of go through a little bit of background. Some of this may seem like a repeat because we've gone over it a couple different times, but real stars of the show will be our building representatives here. So we're going to start with just an overview, like I'd mentioned. Ernie will take it over from there. Principal Miller, as well as instructional coach Lindsay Young, will be here as well, and then followed by discussion and any questions you may have. So again, these first couple slides are just a review about the changes that occurred to the performance profile this past year. As you see, there's elementary and the middle school as far as how the scores are indicated at each year, as well as the high schools. Again, repeat from what we've done before, but the changes that did occur were the different weightings and the measurements that were used to factor in that performance profile. Those profile scores then indicate a certain rating category. And if you remember back from a couple of meetings that we had, both not only with junior achievement, but also I think we had an ed committee meeting as well as a board presentation as well that kind of went through the difference this year compared to previous years about the rating categories and how schools were rated, as well as how they may have dropped or been raised in a certain category. Again, it was a very significant change this year compared to others, both in terms of the measurements as well as the weightings and the categories.
One category that was new to us this year was chronic absenteeism, and their measures are two different pieces that we're looking at. As we're looking at just overall attendance rates and reducing the number of students that experience chronic absenteeism, but then also looking at the average attendance % growth by school. And so this chart here shows how our students that were chronically absent last year, the growth that they're making in terms of increasing their attendance. And so if we were to look at, these obviously are each attendance area, but if you look at our grand total, we are about 7.25% improvement based off of students who were chronically absent last year. So we're really excited to see that our numbers are trending in a really positive direction. There are a lot of systems that we put in place from the district level, but my goodness, the work happens at the building. And it is our team teams. Just for example, Colby and Ernie that are both up here that are really engaging in meaningful conversations with their school-based teams and those families to ensure that we're reducing any barriers to get those kids to school. And so this has been a really positive trend. I do want you to be aware, remember last year, there were some reporting differences on how those of us who use Infinite Campus as our school information system, how the state is pulling that data. So we've been in continuous conversations to make sure that they're pulling the correct, and we have not yet had confirmation that it's going to be correct. So we will continue to keep you updated as we learn more from the DE on how they pull that information.
I also feel like it's the opportunity in the evening to give thanks. We talked a lot about November, so Brady did his group of thanks. I also, if you remember, we belabored the point that the Iowa School Performance Profile was an indicator of one thing, and we really didn't know anything about it until it was released. Jeremy Davis, as well as Austin Wells and our data teams, have done an amazing job, so we can kind of keep monitoring this throughout the year. And some of the dashboards that you just saw, the attendance, and then the next ones we're going to take a look at, are a result of the hard work that they've done to give us the opportunity to continually monitor to see where we're at. So it's not just in December we see, oh, okay, here we are, and then we'll see again 12 months later. So really big thank you to all of them. When we take a look at the high school performance profile data, one of the things that is factored into high school that's not in elementary and middle school is that post-secondary readiness. Again, we've talked about this multiple different times, looking at the college credit, how students are doing in Kirkwood or in AP tests. One of the things that we did not have access to necessarily until this year was an internal database to how students perform on the AP tests that they do in May. So we'll have the opportunities to see throughout the course of a student's high school career how they perform on the AP tests, so we can then factor that into to see how we're progressing towards a post-secondary readiness. The work-based learning, one of the things that we came out really clear once we examined the different things within the profile and the changes that were made this year is that we have a lot of courses within our system that currently could be counted towards work-based learning. And some of the things might not have been indicated with how the state pulls the data. So sometimes it's as simple as thing as going to a drag down menu and making sure that when the state pulls the data, that is then indicated as a work-based learning opportunity. So there are some things that we're missing out in the past that can easily be changed and have been changed with some of those courses for the future years. And that's both for our gen ed things like the home build program, but we're also looking for things within our TAP program with special education students to count their internships and work-based learning as a fulfillment and criteria for the post-secondary readiness as well. And then lastly is that industry recognized credential. This is brand new for the coming year. So we're excited the fact that we've had one of our district created industry recognized credentials, as well as our collaboration with Junior Achievement, where we will have more opportunities for students that participate in this. And just kind of highlight just a big overview of that work with Junior Achievement, through the work with the Dream Accelerator through Career Success and everything, and the Dream Accelerator simulation, as well as the work that's going on in the classroom. We'll guarantee that all of our freshmen beginning next year will have that work-based learning and industry recognized credential factored in towards their scoring. All right, so this is a really tiny chart, which requires not much explanation or overview other than the fact that what I wanted to really do was to highlight again the work of our data team about how we're using the data that is then that we already have within our system, now knowing from the state, how we can then use that data to factor in how our students are progressing. Reminder, just for those of you that maybe don't live this on a daily basis, the post-secondary readiness score indicates only students in 12th grade when they graduate from your system. It doesn't take an overall impact of 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. It only factors in students that are graduating. And it's also a lag year of a couple years behind. So even though the profile was from the 24-25 school year, this was actually the graduates from 2023. So we're always lagging about a year and a half to 2 years behind. So we know that we will see some improvements with our students next year, but we're really going to start to see the growth of our students on the profile as over the course of the next couple, given the lag time from our state.
All right, so that last slide and this slide just talks about how we're monitoring our growth over time. And so as you're aware, those school performance profiles come out in October, and we never want it to sit there and cross our fingers and close our eyes and say, I wonder how we did. So we want to continuously be monitoring our growth in different areas. If you remember, legislation changed the need for school improvement plans. This this year, last year, whenever they changed it, we just said we need to continue to have our strategic goals and look for building alignment towards the goals and what we're trying to do for the district. And so this is the building action plan that all of our buildings work on throughout the entire school year. And so this is just kind of the first page of that, but they go and they look at their own building data and how it aligns to district data and spend a significant amount of time really thinking through their building action steps. There's also pieces within their building action plan that aligns directly to the 3 levels within high reliability schools. And so as they continue to think about our safe and supportive learning environments, our collaborative teams with the professional learning communities, that we're rooting everything that we're doing back in our action plans to how it aligns to those district strategic goals. So I am now going to turn it over to Mr. Ernie Cox, who is our principal at Grantwood Elementary. This is Ernie's second year with us here in ICCSD, and he is going to talk through what his building is doing around raising student achievement. If you think back to the fall when we had buildings that were targeted, Grantwood was targeted and does have an ESSA action plan, and he's going to talk a little bit through what his team has done and is currently doing to target those areas for improvement. So I'll turn it over to Ernie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you to the board for your work. All of those policies really do matter. I referred employees to 2 policies today, so it just keeps my head clear to focus on learning with those policies. So thank you for all the work you do with that. This is my 5th year as a principal, the first 3 in Cedar Rapids, and had the good fortune to work at schools that were designated and got to work with teams to crack the code and how to move schools out of the lower areas of those designations and move them up. The playbook changed a bit, as has been talked about, so now we're really looking at attendance and academic performance in those profiles. Just to echo some things that were said about attendance, what we're seeing the improvement in attendance with the work we're doing at the building level to really understand what barriers are in place for our families. Our student and family advocate, that's a hugely important role. We continue to appreciate having that role supported and funded. That person is truly an advocate for our families, and we have seen a lot of improvement through that role as well. But then there's the learning piece. So if you go back to the previous slide, on our building action plan, one of the primary steps in all of those is our PLCs, our professional learning communities, our teachers, getting them to work collaboratively and supporting them to grow student achievement. There's a lot we can talk about in terms of small groups and interventions, but we know if we can have universal instruction that is delivered to every student be as high quality as possible, that will begin to move us in the right direction. This is probably not as easy to see either. It's almost as small as one of your tables, the strategic implementation guide. But this is something we have PLCs self-reflect on 3 times a year. And I'm happy to tell you again, for the second year, we've seen all of our PLCs move toward the applying and the develop or innovating columns across those anchor statements. And for me, what that means is increasingly teams are getting better and better about improving universal instruction first. They're using data in a timely way. Kind of to Eliza's point, we knew in some of our grade levels what our ISAS would look like this spring based on the data we had from the school year. And that is how we will get there, is if we know during the year how we're performing and not crossing our fingers. We have a couple teams that have really dug into all of these anchors, formatively assessing students frequently, and then responding to that, looking to our NASOT, which is our instructional framework, and really looking for new strategies that will move students along if the old strategies didn't. Our kindergartners this year in their spring screener, we have 80% of our students proficient. Well below 50 was where we started in the fall. That team has just worked diligently, and if we can continue to see that kind of growth in the early grades, it will really pay off in the upper grades. Our 4th grade PLC also did all of this work to a really high level this year, and we did see them move into the 70 percentiles on the ISAS. So we're hoping to see 80 next year, which would be a year ahead of the strategic plan, and we're pretty confident. One reason we're confident is we're really focusing, we're designated for, as you know, for one reason, that we were lowered by an entire designation because of targeted status for Hispanic and English learners. So as soon as we got these ISAS results, we met with our 4th grade and our 5th grade PLCs, our English language learner teachers, and really began to focus on those subgroups and those students and try to decide what do they need to be able to move to the next level next year. And just to kind of expand on what Eliza mentioned, the High Reliability Schools framework really aligns with our work in ESSA. These are the building blocks that have been around for a long time in the ESSA process from the state. And in all 6 of those, they align directly to things we're doing in our High Reliability Schools framework. Level 1, we spent a lot of time last year looking at our schedule. Were we allotting enough instructional time? Were we following that schedule? Did people have enough, the materials they needed, the resources they needed? Did they have enough time to collaborate, all that collaborative support, both their PLC time, but also across teams? So we have teams of special ed teachers, Title I teachers, English language learners. We have our extended learning program. We built in more and more time for them to collaborate as well. And as we get into level 2, around effective instruction in every classroom, again, it aligns perfectly with assessments for learning, increasing the quality and kind of assessment we have, and that everything we're doing is aligned with the standards. Eliza and I were able to go to a couple sessions from folks at the High Reliability Schools Summit, and one of the speakers said it's not a mystery what we're aiming for. The state tells us what the standards are, and we just have to find a way to get all of our time to be focused on that, and that's increasingly what we're able to do through the High Reliability Schools framework.
All right, while we transition here to Principal Miller and Instructional Coach Young, one thing I do want to highlight is the fact that we talked a lot about attendance. I think a large part of attendance is students feeling engaged in the classroom. And then when students are engaged in the classroom, they attend school, we should see higher performance of students in the classroom, which should then correlate to strong performance in our statewide assessment. So Anna Austin, who works with our instructional coaches, her and I meet with our instructional coaches and admin twice a year to talk through their goals and their performance towards those goals. And the last time we met with North Central, and we were talking through like who do we highlight within the performance profile work here, it was pretty clear to me that North Central would have been an outstanding school to highlight based upon their intention, not necessarily with direction, but the intention that they have to improve achievement of their students in their building through high expectations with their staff. So I'll turn it over to them.
Good evening. Thanks for having Lindsay and I here. When you talk about school improvement and the school profiles, I think the first thing that comes to mind when you're talking about improvement is you have to have a solid MTSS system in place, which is a multi-tiered system of support. So just to give you a little bit of context of what I'm talking about, Tier 1 is the tier in which every student gets that level of support. So if you think about kids in the least restrictive environment, when they come into your building, they go into classrooms, they're getting the strong academic instruction from teachers, the behavioral, the social emotional support. Usually about 80% of our students can function really well within that Tier 1. Anytime that a student is struggling, whether it be academically, social emotionally, behaviorally, we would look to move that student into Tier 2 and see what other wraparound supports are there to support that student so they're successful. And hopefully with those successes, that would kick them back to Tier 1, where they can operate again in that least restrictive environment and operate independently. Sometimes in Tier 2, that usually is about, you're talking about 15% of the school population. If they're not successful there, sometimes students need a more intensive support. And when you talk Tier 2, you're talking maybe 2 to 3 days a week. Maybe they need specialized direct instruction with the teacher, with a guidance counselor, with an administrator, whoever that support staff may be. They're not successful there. We're looking at Tier 3, which is more intensive, daily support. And that can range it from check-in, check-out, in our tier 2 to more intensive daily support with, again, whatever that need may be, whatever that support staff may be. The ultimate goal is always to move kids not up the tier, but down the tier, so they can operate independently and successfully on their own. So at North Central, we have an academic MTSS system. We also have a behavioral, social, emotional MTSS system that's targeted to help, again, students be successful and for student growth. So that's a little bit of context of our MTSS system. I'm going to let Lindsay talk about what those academic supports look like at North Central.
All right, I'll try to keep it brief because support for kids, I can talk all day. So what Colby just mentioned, one really exciting thing that we did this year was split that academic and behavioral student support team. I was able to be on the student support team last year as an admin fellow. And we just found the need to really create space for looking at what support kids need in both of those lenses. Since then, I've become the instructional coach for North Central. So I get to live in the world of Tier 1 that Colby talked about for a majority of my time. And so really, when we're talking about academics, we're talking about that strong Tier 1 that's been mentioned several times and going through that PLC collaborative cycle process where we're looking at data just in time. We've given ourselves kind of a challenge at North Central to really look at something like, we like to call it Tier 1 interventions. So even before we get to that Tier 2 and Tier 3, looking at in Tier 1, where can we better support kids? And that's where that HRS and NASAT framework has really helped define some of those things that teachers can do to help support kids and give us different things to try. And then from there, if we see a consistent pattern of data where students are struggling, taking that to our Tier 2, Tier 3 academic support team and looking at several different pieces of data that are listed here on the left to determine what the next steps are for those larger gaps for students. And specifically in academic areas. So we look primarily at math and reading, but we're also doing some work with some executive functioning skills for students as well in that academic MTSS. And Colby's going to talk a little bit more about our behavior MTSS system as well.
So when we look at our students' behavior, social, emotional needs, some of the data that we would look at, and we would start having conversations about students and how we could support them. Some of the data points would be looking at referral data out of the classroom or in the hallways, in our common areas. So if there is a behavior infraction, if they have 4+ minor behaviors or 3+ major behaviors, we're certainly going to be having conversations about that student and figuring out what supports are needed to support that student. We look at the attendance, 3 absences as our benchmarks, or 3 skipped classes. We also look at if there's avoidance of class, if students are making frequent trips to the health office to avoid particular classes, that's going to be a red flag for us. Counseling visits, if they like to meander it onto the counseling office. I know they have great relationships with our counselors, but sometimes that's a red flag that they're looking to avoid doing something. We have panorama screener data. We have Tableau data. We also have, with both the academic and the behavior, when you talk our behavior systems, our teachers obviously are in the trenches. They're going to see things that we don't. We have a referral process that they can refer students to the student support team so we can keep kids on our radar and, again, help support them through our SST. One thing I want to point out, we talk about our SST, our student support team. They meet weekly every Tuesday, and that's comprised of our admin, guidance counselors, Grantwood AEA staff, support staff, coaches, and those are the minds that come together and see what we can do to help a kid academically, social, emotionally, behaviorally. We then give that feedback back to the teachers. We communicate the plan that we're putting in place for that student, and then each week we monitor the progress of that. We communicate with parents with what our plan is with students. So they're in the loop because we always know that our best results come from when we have parents in school on the same page supporting the kid. So this is just a matrix that we have as well, a behavior matrix. But I will say, and Lindsay alluded to this, we know that Tier 2 and Tier 3 is not where we support kids the best. We support kids the best at Tier 1 in the classroom with their classroom teacher. And we want to build strategies, give our teachers the skills they need to support every kid in Tier 1. And we find out at that point, really a lot of times kids don't need that Tier 2 support when they have a solid Tier 1 support. So that's really our main focus. Thank you. Oh, and I do want to point out one thing, sorry. When you talk MTSS systems, I didn't get to put this in the slides because we just got this morning. But when you talk about student profiles and being targeted in certain areas, ELL at North Central is an area we were targeted for this coming school year. And we just got some notification here this morning. And I just want to read it because it's a great celebration and it's a testament to our teachers, these systems, and how they support students. Our ELL department is proud to share that your school has earned the Iowa City Community School District ELL Superstar Award in recognition of your students' exceptional growth on the 2025 Spring ELPA 21 Summative Assessment in the areas of listening, speaking, reading, and writing domains. There's a criteria that they had to meet, and they've exceeded that, and that is Emily Foley, Tiffany Roisland, our two ELL teachers at North Central, do a fantastic job. They work very closely with our teachers in a collaborative way in the general ed classroom to provide that environment for the kids, and that's why we're seeing that growth. So that was a celebration. I didn't want that to go unnoticed because they do an awesome job. So thank you.
I appreciate Colby bringing that up there at the end. My email got blasted this morning, so that usually means that I screwed up a calendar invite or did something wrong, and they want to all tell me that. But it actually came from all the secondary schools that I got copied on for the outstanding performance, just like Colby had mentioned with their ELL population. So, all right, questions?
All right, directors, questions, comments?
I have one quick question, and then don't go too far, Principal Miller, because I want you to expand on that, the SST that you were talking about. So for the college credit, I know there was some discussion about encouraging or helping to enable more kids take AP classes, especially if we thought that, not AP classes, but the AP test, if we thought that they were going to score a 3 or more. Do we have any more development on that, or any updates for us?
Yeah, so one of the barriers that has been there in the past is any type of funding, because it does cost money to take an AP test. So that's not a barrier. Our building staffs work with our students, and if they don't want to take it, and Brady could probably speak to this a little bit better than I can, being an AP teacher, but ensuring who's going to take the test and if there are reasons why students may or may not take it. The college admission for those courses has changed drastically over the course of the last few years. So that sometimes there's not an incentive as much as there was in the past based upon how students score a 3 or higher. So the barrier was one thing with the AP, the funding piece. The others, I think, we'll see once we get the results here, the window just closed last week as far as the AP tests, where we're at in comparison to previous years.
Yeah, thanks. As an AP teacher, I think, Lucas hit it right on the head. A couple of changes that the College Board have made. They now sign up for the test in October. So I think we've had a renewed commitment at the level of the buildings to make sure that we're communicating with families and students about the opportunity that it is going to happen in May, because the sign up is a lot earlier than it used to be. And for sometimes students aren't quite as confident as they should be at that point in the school year. So I think there's been a lot of conversations we've had at the building levels to make sure students know that even if it seems a little bit fuzzy right now, it's going to get more clear, and that the test might be something that they want to take advantage of. I do think that the changes in college and university credit has probably been the biggest barrier. Colleges and universities have to make money as well, and their TAs are an important part of that process. And so kids were coming in with a lot of college credit already earned through AP and International Baccalaureate and those other things. And I think that they've tightened up what it takes in order to get college credit, moving from 3, 4, or 5 is passing according to the College Board. A lot of your colleges now are looking at 4s and 5s, and some only 5s, and then maybe they only give gen ed credit. So that's something we just have to work through with our students to, they're savvy, decision makers. So I think that there's some good opportunities. We had a really good initiative a few years ago with sort of an all-in process for AP programming, and that's what I think we need to continue to do, is to do outreach for students who maybe never saw themselves as an AP student. There's lots of great courses that we offer that would fit, some of their interest levels, and then encourage them to be confident about, taking that exam in May. So.
And Director Finch, I usually talk too much and don't overlook things, but I did overlook, so I appreciate you bringing us back to the college credit piece, because the AP test is one of those pieces. But if you remember, in our discussion about the CFI learning spaces, one of the things that we highlighted was the Kirkwood Academies that we're looking to bring to this Center for Innovation. So by doing that, I think we're going to have more flexibility when those courses are offered, not at the regional center, but within our own district. So that's our ultimate goal, is to get more access to those.
Wonderful, thank you. And then I had one other question for Principal Miller, that your is it the SST? Is that what you called it? That really caught my attention, and I was just curious if you could tell me again who attends those meetings, because I think the fact that you said you had coaches at those meetings even?
Yeah, sorry, I should have.
Instructional coaches.
Instructional
okay,
coaches,
okay,
yes.
got
So
it.
we have a special ed instructional coach.
Okay,
and
your instructional coaches,
and
okay.
yep.
And then is this something that's done at other secondary schools as well, or is it just unique to North Central?
No, it's
Okay.
done at other
It's done-
secondary
okay,
schools.
all
Yeah.
right. Okay, thank you.
All of our schools, every school.
All schools. Okay, wonderful.
I guess I just want to say that I was taken by your comment that the best outcome for students is to have support at the Tier 1 level. And that's where our goal, is to have all students getting that support. To me, that's a much more encouraging outlook on student participation in their learning than some of the things that are brought to us from time to time, which are more punitive in nature.
And Director Eastham, if you ever go to an HR conference or summit, on your HRS bingo card, the saying, "You can't intervene your way out of a Tier 1 issue," will be mentioned somewhere at some conference. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay, thank you.
Between, can you go back to the post-secondary readiness index slide, just so I know thank you. Between the work-based learning credential and the industrial recognized credentials, do you believe, this is for Superintendent Degner, sorry, do you believe that we, and maybe Lucas as well, but do you believe that we'll need to further diversify our career technical education programs to meet these? Or do you feel confident in what we have offered, or what are?
I think both. I think there's room to do more with what we have, but as you've seen some of the ideas we brought you, we continue to look for other areas that we can also expand to and continue to include. I think the thing that's always one of the strengths of our district is the, depth and breadth of our program of studies. And so the more things we can do in the areas of work-based learning, industry recognized credentials, if those are course embedded things or if those are new courses with opportunities, I think we want to leave all options on the table. But I also think there's room for us to improve. Lucas even talked about, just there's been a lack of direction sometimes from the state about what can count and what can be clear. And so also trying to do that on a student by student basis throughout the district to make sure we get those all coded correctly has been a challenge. And so we even have some room there that we've continued to make up some ground here in the last 12 months.
And
go ahead, sorry.
Do you mind, just the IRCs do come with a cost too. So there is a state list of approved IRCs that are either created by somebody else or districts are working to create. There are some that are free, but there are many that come at a cost per student. So, and that doesn't guarantee success because it comes with passing an assessment. And if you need multiple times to pass an assessment, you keep getting charged for that particular rate. So, the goal for us is to create ones that we can, but then to find ones that are financially, what's the word I'm looking for? That are financially smart for us to use.
That's one that resets every year for a student, or am I wrong for both those two? So like every year,
They just
for
need
all
it.
three of these.
Yeah, for all three, they need one fulfillment in that just once during their 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade year throughout their entire 4 years, not one every 3 or every 4, excuse me.
Thank you. And thank you for everybody that presented tonight.
And especially, I just want to say, I don't have any questions, but I want to thank the three of you for extending your workday by coming to present with us and share your excitement on the work that you're doing in your building. And especially Principal Miller, thank you for sharing your celebration that you all are having, that improvement in your ELL. That is huge. So I just wanted to make sure that was acknowledged. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you, guys. Next up is our FMP 2.2 discussion.
All right. Good evening again, everybody. So our last presentation item for you this evening is on FMP 2.3, as we're going to start referring to it now, since you're getting a new iteration of the second facility master plan. The last time we were to you with a timeline and an update this substantial would have been this summer. We continued to acquire data points throughout the year. You guys are familiar with the fine arts study that we had commissioned and delivered back on some recommendations. And so tonight, Chase is going to deliver the update and kind of anchor us back to some of the place that we've been with the development of this second facility master plan, all the way to the projects that we have included in the timeline for your consideration. Ideally, we would like you to consider this for approval at your June 10th meeting, and that we could start to work forward and use this as our roadmap to guide the work. And so Chase will talk some specifics and further process details, and I think he's ready to go now. So go ahead.
Thanks. Well, good evening. And as Superintendent Degner said, we do want to spend some time talking about the actual project plan for FMP 2.3. Before that, just kind of a refresher on where we've been and how we got here. And of course, I get to stand up here and talk to you about all these great things that we've done and that we're going to do. But a lot of the credit goes to the team, Kurt, Adam, and of course, Dwayne and Jeff, who is retired, but all the work they've done so far. And so, like I said, I just get the privilege to stand up here and share some of the good work that we're doing. But of course, the credit goes all the way around. Going to take a little bit of a look backwards. And then, as we said, we're moving from 2.2 to 2.3. And then, of course, some time for some discussion this evening. If we think way back to the spring and the summer of 2021, we'd come out of COVID. We'd just come out of our Portrait of a Graduate, and we went right into our FMP 2.0 planning. And you see the timeline there of how it transpired with our engagement over the spring and summer, our PEPAL and SAVE extension vote in November, and the board getting a first peek at FMP 2.0 in December, and then passing it in the spring. To date, over the last several years and the projects that are still in progress, we spent about $156 million. That leaves just over between 114 and 115 million from what we originally proposed to the board several years ago. The other thing I'd like to point out on this slide is we pulled this from our FMP 2.0 website. And this is some of the work the board did. First, thank you for the engagement and your foresight and your leadership on this work back in 2021. But those principles that have guided what we've done, growing our early learning, increasing our student opportunity through school design, and supporting the whole child. And if you read those snippets underneath there, as I reflected on this presentation and the work we've done, I think that we've stayed pretty true to that, and the work that we want to move forward sticks with those guiding principles. And you see some of that examples of early learning, our development or school spaces, being designed to increase opportunity and supporting the whole child, and the work that we've done in our move to middle schools, of course, our preschool expansion, some of the work we did around the Horn addition and remodel. And if you recall, part of our tagline, we've had several taglines, but one of the initial taglines on 2.0 was completing the promise. Because of the way we funded FMP 1.0, there were some things that we intentionally told the community, hey, look, we just can't do that now. We're going to need to do that in the next round. And the Horn edition was one of those completing the promises. So were some of the things we had to come back around for City High and West. And so you see phase 3 there at both places. career tech spaces, as we just talked about with the presentation, science rooms and security entrances, and orchestra and music at West. Of course, some upgrades to elementary secured entrances, and then the Center for Innovation. Again, creating spaces that help embed future learning for our students. And so those are some of the quick highlights we had from FMP 2.0. But as time went on, obviously we needed to update the FMP. And so we started with iterations, 2.1 and 2.2. And back when we did FMP 2.0, we presented it as a living document, something that we wanted to be a roadmap, but that was also malleable enough that we could change it and make modifications as we went along. You see a timeline of some of the interactions that we've had as an administration and a board over the last several years around FMP2. And quite honestly, where we were in the spring and summer of 2021 is much different than we are today. And some of the iterations of our plan reflect that. We also know that some of those things were unknown back in 2021 coming out of COVID, that we didn't get information from until later on through that process. And I think this timeline reflects our ability to take in new information, take in changes in our circumstances, and pivot in a way that helps us continue to keep what we want to do for students and for our district at the forefront, not just be aligned to one thing. And as Matt said, what we're going to present to you tonight is what we would call FMP 2.3. A couple of reasons for that. It has changed. Our focus has changed, staying within inside those guiding principles, but those projects, it's come down a little bit in scope. Some of those projects have been completed, but also the timeline, the tail of the timeline is not as long. And so we thought for clarity and transparency and ability to see where we are, renaming it 2.3 as the board hopefully entertains a vote on this next month, provides that kind of better optics for the community to say, okay, this was 2.0, then 2.1, 2.2, which actually we never voted on last summer, but we did have some significant conversation about that iteration, and now to 2.3 that we will ask for a vote at next month's meeting. Well, constituent engagement, an important piece of the work. The primary community engagement around 2.0 was done when we first formulated the plan back in 2021, spring and summer. So the term constituent is purposeful here. Not all of these engagements are with the broader community. Some, like that picture there around some of the natatorium engagements, are with the broader community. But a lot of it is also with our internal stakeholders, making sure that as we set a plan, we're taking the pulse of our schools, of our employees, and where we are in the work that needs to take place. And so again, we know that we ramped that up right at the beginning of 2.0. And the last year we've come back around and done some engagements around athletics, and then also fine arts in the winter and the spring. And as that last bullet says, we'll continue to engage with our constituents as we move forward through the FMP 2.3 process. So what are the projects that we're looking at? Thank you for your time over the last couple of meetings as we've had some different presentations, whether that was about fine art spaces or the natatorium, and talking about where we are. And as we kind of continue to dial in this work, you see a bulleted list of the highlights. Our upgrades to fine arts at the high schools, athletic field improvements, the construction of multi-purpose indoor practice facilities that would span music and athletics, as well as other opportunities, elementary outdoor classrooms and playgrounds, again, going back to some of those guiding principles and ongoing work. And then 2 municipal partnerships, one with the city of Coralville on the Aquatic Center, and the other with the city of Iowa City on Mercer Park for baseball and softball. And then the identification of proposed future projects. Just like in 1.0, there are things that we know that would be good for our students, that our buildings would like to see. But we have to make some priorities. And so we want to start identifying those, but also understand those are going to be outside the reach of our current 2.3 project timeline. So with all of that is background, and we have a theme of providing you very small documents of things to read this evening, but you have this in a separate document that we uploaded that gives you kind of the timeline of the various projects. This is a document in a format that is hopefully familiar to you all as board members and to our community now, as this has been kind of a calling card of Dwayne's. This is how he has timelined our projects over the last almost 15 years. And so you see the projects there. I'm not going to go through them one by one, but really what we've laid out is tried to create a balance of those different categories of projects, both a mix of the fine arts and our athletic projects over the next 5 years, and across our different feeder patterns, and so that we're doing work in all areas of the district. Now, it doesn't mean we're doing the same project in every area of the district at the same time, but making sure that we're not focusing in one area of the district, then a different area, then a third district, trying to balance that across. And there's a variety of reasons. Those are two of them, of other reasons why the projects get laid out the way they do. Part of it is we want to try to balance the funding across the various years, in terms of making sure that we don't have one year that's a huge spike where we're spending $75 million, and then a couple of years we're only spending $10 or $15 million. And then there's just projects where one thing has to happen before another project has to happen. For example, I mentioned the partnership with the city of Iowa City and the ball fields we're building at Mercer Park. The multi-purpose facility at City High is proposed to go where the current softball field is. Well, we can't start building that and displace the softball team until they have their new complex built. And so there's a number of those jigsaw pieces that we put together. Now, that doesn't mean, right, that we're not continuing to refine this. As I mentioned, the conversations and the feedback from constituents is ongoing. And so we continue to meet with our building leaders, and will again after they see this. And so you might see some timeline tweaks as we come back in June, but we are confident in the projects as our recommendation of what we would include in 2.3 over the next 5 to 6 years. But again, we're happy to, as we have our discussion tonight, take some feedback about if we need to make some minor tweaks in how we move those around to accommodate the different needs of our buildings. We can certainly look at that. But this would be the recommendation of the projects that we would put forward for 2.3 between now and 2030. And then lastly, as we look at the financing and the budget piece, the projected cost, it was on that previous slide at the bottom, $104 million approximately, with a contingency of $10 million. SAVE continues to be our primary funding source out of for our FMP. And that 104 plus 10, right, 114 million, if you remember back to one of those previous slides, that's about what we still have remaining from what we originally presented at the beginning of 2.0. And so we've tried to maximize our utilizations of the funds that we have. And then it's a 5-year roadmap. It's a timeline. As I pointed out, between 21 and 24, we had some things that changed, and we were able to pivot or make some modifications as need be. And we continue to see this as a living document. The vote that we would ask for at the beginning of June, at the June 10th meeting, is just the first step in the project approval process. If you remember some of the work we did last summer around what we called Appendix 9, but it's actually Policy 707.5G1. FMP is the first step, and we put in there that when projects were over $2 million, we would pull them out of the Appendix 9 process at Step 2 and make them standalone projects on the consent agenda. So there'd be another a better visual as when we move some of that forward. And of course, we have public hearings along the way as well. And so this is by no means the final time you would see any of these projects, but it is what we would recommend as the proposed projects that you would vote on at the June meeting for FMP 2.3. And with that, I would entertain discussion and questions.
Directors, feel free to jump in.
Chase, can you comment on how the timing that's here for the moratorium with the combined pool with Corwell the district.
Sure.
How this timing works with what we know about what
I-
council's timing wants.
I think, Charlie, what you said there is why it's why it's based how it is in this. It's based on what we know from the city of Coralville, the conversations that they had with us at the board table. That's one that we would have to adjust based on their timeline. But the information they shared when they were with us last month suggests that's when they believe they're going to be able to get the vote and then start getting their funding together, and the planning and the construction process would take place. But that's one that would be subject to where the city is on that.
Okay, great, thanks.
I just had a couple quick questions. I'm looking at the auditorium updates at each school, and, I try not to have my green tinted glasses on all the time, but, I feel like West High needs that auditorium updates soon, and they're actually the last one to get that project done. So I'm interested in the timing for that, if that can be somehow adjusted. And also, what happened to the black boxes?
So, yes, the answer to the first question about can we look at it. That's actually some feedback we got from the West High team, and so we've already started to look at what we might be able to make adjustments for that fine arts project for West. And quite honestly, if we could, and Dwayne would love this, and Kurt would too, we would do everything next year, right? But we can't. And the timeline is pretty condensed at 5 years, which we're happy about. But you're right, Director Abraham, that was some of the feedback that we got from Josh Moe when he was here, is that auditorium is not in great shape at West. And so I think that comment is well made. So we've already started talking with Dwayne and Kurt and the team, and also Mitch, of, okay, it's still a game of Tetris, and so we're going to have to potentially move a couple of things around and how we might be able to do that. In terms of the black box question, one of the reasons you see some of the larger fine arts projects towards the second half of the 5-year plan is because we're still trying to dial some of those in exactly with the buildings. And, we've had a couple of rounds of conversations with them, and each building has unique needs. And so trying to work with their administration, with their fine arts staff, to make sure that we get them what they need and what they think will move their buildings forward in a way that best serves their students. And so rather than trying to, I was going to say box ourselves in, but to a scene, I know, right? That's why I stopped, but I've dad jokes all night. Rather than kind of tie our hands under one project that we put out there, we wanted to step back a little bit and signal that these projects are important to us, that we're willing to invest serious dollars in fine arts upgrades at the buildings, but also understand that we need to continue to work with the administration and the teachers at those schools and the directors so that we're giving them what they want. And quite honestly, as we rolled the FMP process forward, we just started the conversations around some of the athletics facilities a lot sooner. And so we're further down the process on those. And we'd rather do it right than try to rush some of those bigger projects.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to follow up on Molly's comment. We may not want to rush the West High Stage and Auditorium project, but we have a great student orchestra waiting to perform on whatever we can do at West.
Fair enough.
Thank you for the presentation.
Sure.
I am disappointed that Dwayne isn't presenting. No idea why he wasn't allowed to. I see you here. I'm glad we got a Dwayne chart at least out of it. With respect to community engagement, so there's a wide range of projects on here, but for example, there's field houses at all 3 of our comprehensive schools, and they're 12-minute, they're big projects. Do we intend to, hold engagement sessions with, for example, City High about what that field house looks like and what amenities are offered in it? Are those the types of, are we kind of going to do micro engagement through the process? Is the field house plan set? Like, what's that going to look like?
Yeah, No, we do not. We do not plan to go out to the community and then do an open house about, well, we want this amount of turf or we want this amount of track. They're large investments. We feel like that we have gotten a good sense of what our buildings believe those spaces should look like and how to best support the students. We also know we're on a limited budget at $12, $13 million dollars. They are, again, expensive, and I think that's one of the beauties and also one of the setbacks of being in a large district where you have multiple schools. We're looking at building 3 field houses and an auditorium project for less than a district up the road is spending on an indoor facility, because they have the luxury of being a one high school district, right? And so you have to look at your resources differently. And as you look at how we try to ensure that we provide our students great opportunity, but also balance it across that, Director Williams, sometimes we have to look at, okay, this is something that we've gotten input on, and if we try to dial it in any more specifically, we're going to lose that ability to do it across all 3 campuses.
So I guess who comes up with the plans? Do we bid it out and we see who gives us our best field house for $12 million?
Well, we didn't, credit to Dwayne. He didn't just kind of draw it out on a whiteboard. We've actually worked with a couple of different outside organizations to work on a master plan and then to give us some very high level ideas of what one would cost based on, we want this much turf and we want meeting rooms at the end. And then we'll bid the design projects, or not bid them out. Yeah, we'll bid out the design projects to come up with the concepts.
And then it sounds like the engagement part has already happened, though. Like we have talked to the schools about what they need.
That's what I was going to say. So some of these are just in different spaces, right? And so we've done probably more of the specified engagement around some of these athletic concepts, where when Chase talked about the fine arts examples, right? Some of that's still ongoing, right? So we're still meeting with the fine arts teams. That's been more recent, and that was some of his reasoning for why it's a little further into the process, because we've probably got those concepts more well refined with the athletics, just because we're further down the road with those. And so while we tried to create that balance, some of those engagements have already happened. That field house example, that's probably why we wouldn't do a whole lot more with the specific campuses there, where fine arts, we probably do have a lot more work to do, just like any process we put together, in the design part before we move forward with a project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chase. Okay, I have lots of questions about the field houses, mostly coming from community members that I've engaged with over this. So first of all, the City High Field House, that will be on campus, because I heard a rumor that might have to be off-site because we didn't have the place to put it. Is that
Nope.
That's just a rumor?
It's
How did
just
I
a
hear
rumor.
Okay.
Just a rumor.
Great, that's wonderful. Okay. I do. So again, as you mentioned, there's 3 of them. So it does give me a little concern, because I know we had that issue with the middle schools. We start off with, they were going to be $9 million, and then the cost increased to 14, and then they ended up being more like 17. Double. So we've already had that issue with the field houses. I think the cost, when we started discussing this last year, started off at $6 million, and it's already increased to 12, 13 and a half. So how confident are we that cost is not, it's a big facility. How confident are we that cost is not going to increase any further?
Sure. None of us have I'll comment, and then Dwayne wants to add. We don't have a crystal ball, and that's why we've tried to work with some outside partners to get some cost projections. And so we can't say that there's a 100% certainty that it won't increase. Of course, that's why we build a contingency into the projects of that $10 million. It's also why you've seen those numbers a little bit more on the slides tonight that you have in the past, because even Newman Munson, right, when they were here talking about the natatorium, said that they'd recently learned that there was a projection of increased cost on construction for 5% of the next 2 years. Well, knowing that, we try to incorporate some of that information into our numbers as well, so we can start to plan for that. We've looked at this because we are as you said, Director Finch, building 3. And so that number can jump. And so we've tried to be very diligent in looking at similar facilities, looking at what's been developed and talking to individuals as we bring those numbers so we can have them dialed in. And then, of course, building that contingency into the projects to help alleviate any of that cost growth over the next couple of years. Dwayne?
Thank you. First of all, Director Williams, thank you for the kind words. And Director Abrams, if you look down the project list, the fine arts may or may not be the black boxes. So it's just listed as fine arts.
Where it says fine arts additions, not the updates.
Right.
You mean?
Yeah,
But they're, like Liberty has 5 million, City
Right.
High 5 million, West High is somehow off the
Right.
chart.
And I've already got 2 pages of notes of changes and scribbles that I've made since I've sat here. So, okay. And then Director Finch, back when we first started talking about the field houses, multi-practice facilities, we did a square foot cost. Then we hired a professional estimator and really got some detailed costs. So at the time, we then kind of upped it to 9 million because costs were going up. And then we hired a architectural firm to do a master plan, and they upped it again. So that's the history of those updates. I feel pretty comfortable with today's prices that we can build a pretty nice facility for 12 million. The reason City High is higher is because it's on a site that has multiple elevations and may add to the cost. And yes, it's on the site.
Wonderful. Okay. You have a lot of experience with this, Dwayne. You know, the unpredictability of building costs, and we're in a situation right now where there's talks of tariffs and increase in building costs. So I don't know if there's been any talk about maybe just holding off on some of these projects until we know better. That we're not going to get ourselves into a situation like we did with the middle schools where the costs, and
Right.
after we had already started, just they skyrocketed.
Well, my experience over the years is tell me when you wait, it always goes up. In building construction costs very rarely deflate. They inflate. It seems like every year in May they go up. And that was kind of the historical nature of it. But with regard to the middle schools, those plans changed dramatically during design. And by the time we got into construction, we were building 25 classrooms plus cafeterias plus music rooms. The scope changed a lot on those 3 buildings. Not that that's the answer, because the costs were very unpredictable as well. We had unpredictable soil conditions, so there were a lot of things that did that. I feel more confident about these buildings. They're pretty straightforward. They're metal frame buildings with a concrete exterior, sloped roofs. I've built hundreds of these things. I've built airports this way, and I'm pretty confident that we can get these done. The issue is how much can you afford to spend on the inside? How fancy is the turf, or what do you do with the classroom or the team room or any potential locker rooms? That's the variable that we have to work through, but I feel comfortable that we can maintain the budget.
Thank you,
Dwayne, do you mind just kind of referencing from the projects that we started in FMP 2.0? And so, a frequent example I think all of us get is the middle schools going over budget, right?
Mhm.
But when we look at that whole project list, just some ballpark about looking at all of the projects, including the middle schools, we still kept a contingency, correct?
We did. We
Yes.
kept the
And
35
you've
million.
been able to carry over some of that contingency to fund these projects now,
That's
right?
correct. So if you look at it as a total, and I appreciate the comment, we were under budget. We did maintain our contingency, and we do have funds available to move forward. So when you look at it, the total scope, it's pretty darn good.
Thank you, Dwayne. And
Yep.
then a question about the operational costs of the field houses. Will there be any general fund money, dollars going towards operational costs for the field houses? Any anticipated?
In all honesty, we haven't lined out like it's a part of our buildings, like a part of our campus. And so the operational upkeep of that particular piece of the building would be proportionate as we look at the costs across our different categories for other parts of our athletic facilities or other facilities in general. So while I don't have the percentage, Director Finch, or an annual piece, yes, there will inevitably be some dollars spent from the general fund to upkeep the field houses like other parts of our campuses.
Yeah, we got to pay the electricity bills.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, with that one, I just maybe to add in what you ask your next question, Director Finch, I would think about, just anytime we expand the footprint of the district, right, we're going to have some increased operational costs, but are we going to hire anybody specifically for the field houses? No, right? But custodial staff or activities we're now able to provide, there could be some costs that way.
I should have let the CFO answer. So.
Yeah, and I was actually just going to say along those lines, when you think about our general fund budget and 86% is staff would be the question here. So, assuming that we are not hiring staff for these facilities, general fund costs would be, you mentioned electricity, things along those lines, which are, a relatively small percentage of our general fund. The bigger ongoing cost would be the facility itself, and looking at that as something within the PEPL life cycle budgeting that we do, making sure that we're accounting for increased costs there for maintenance and that sort of thing within the facility.
And then if I could ask one more question about the utilization of the field house, like what does that look like during the day? How much of it will be utilized during the school day? Will they have PE classes in there? Will they marching band? I'm just trying to get a feel for how many students will be using it and how much time during the week it's going to be used.
Our understanding is yes on both of those, and that those are ones that come to mind a lot are for use of PE or PE, performance PE, but also band practice, the dance team, right? So things that can happen during the day, and then also on the evenings and the weekends. We don't have necessarily a schedule set from the buildings, but in terms of items they've told us back that they would utilize them, yes, they've told us it won't just be on the night or the weekends, it'll be during the school day, and it will be where they need additional spaces for the things that you mentioned, PE and music primarily. But I assume there are others that our high school principals will come up with as well.
Thank you.
Of course.
Just to add a little bit to this conversation, bringing up the high school principals who have already made recommendations about the need and the utilization of field houses, other improvements to athletic facilities, and this significant expansion of our fine arts space capabilities and attractiveness. I'm keeping in mind myself that this is all being done for students. Students have asked for this through various voices. The school staff, school teachers have who know what students would like to be able to see when they get to an auditorium, when they get to an athletic facility. They've asked for these things. So I'm not personally quite so interested in or concerned about expending money, because this to me is why we have money to spend, because students want us to build things for them that they are going to enjoy and incorporate into their education experience. I'll go back to the I went to the West High concert last week or a few days ago at West, and that orchestra, as the orchestra at Liberty and City, make music that is beautiful, engaging, inspiring, marvelous. How in the world they get from 4th grade to 12th grade, or 4th grade to 10th grade actually, is a mystery to me. But it's something that teachers do and students do. And to do that, they need space. So to me, what we're doing here is providing space. The same thing applies to students who do athletics too.
Mine's short. But I just, the fine arts, like the black boxes or our field houses, is there potential to add those to our facilities rental space? And so we can make those, they could maybe revenue generate a little bit for community organizations. I'm just thinking especially of the indoor turf and how many people need indoor turf in the winter months to do a variety of sports practices.
Yes.
That might be some revenue generation.
Yes, and I was going to go there with Director Finch's question, but I mean, I'd never say never, but we were speaking more directly during the school day, and we wouldn't probably rent that indoor space, even if it's not directly connected to the building during the school day, but in the evenings and the weekends. Yes.
I just want to talk just kind of high level of sort of the beyond, 2030 part, right? And I know everything's cyclical, but if you look at this, right, it's all high school, right? Even the stuff that's listed as beyond, it's all high school. And I know FMP 1.8 was a lot of elementary. We just redid all the middle schools, and now it's kind of high school. So I just kind of want to talk about that cyclical nature. Like, at what point are we going to swing back around and really revisit like the elementaries and what kind of work will need to be there? Because when you just look at this in a vacuum, right, it's like 95% high school, which is fine.
Do you want to talk to your mind?
No, I think that's an excellent point, too, Director Eystone. I mean, a lot of these things you guys are bringing up tonight are the same questions we've talked about, and I think you're right to talk about the recent history of investments we've made into those buildings. But there can and probably will be some potential decisions that need to be made at elementary or middle level, right, and continued spots. And so I think that's, again, what kind of goes in that post-2030 conversation about what additional needs for renovation are there. You just obviously received a capacity study that showed, we have a lot of additional seats available at our elementary schools, and they've all been touched by the facility plans that we've done prior. And so we feel like we're in a good spot with those, but it's not to say that, as you just do long-term planning, that you don't want to account for that. And so that's why, in this plan, there's still another $35 million of SAVE revenue that could be utilized by future boards. And then, of course, a new funding mechanism could be sought out, just like we did in FMP 1.0, right, to deal with additional needs that may present as well. And so I think you're right to mention that a lot of these needs are secondary focused. I think another another probably point to make, when we talk about some of these things, is these are all important school choice pieces for us as well. When we look at what our competitor districts are doing, they're building field houses in Solon. Regina has one. Linn-Mar has one, right? And so these are all things that, to Charlie's point, when he's talking about things our students want or things I think our parents are expecting us to do, our parents at that orchestra concert at West High the other night, they all saw the floorboard in the auditorium move every time Director Welch stepped on it, right? And those are the things that we need to address and that we need to be ready to capitalize on. And then also with an eye on the future, right? And I think that's how you do the long-term planning. So yes, our elementary is represented here to the same level. No, and we wouldn't tell that to anybody. But I think those are a few things just to think about in your conversations and deliberations.
The one thing I'd add to what Superintendent Degner said was those projects are not an exhaustive list of what we think could be in a 3.0 version post 2030. These are things that were either slotted in the original 2.0, one of the additions since then, or things that we had gotten in feedback and conversations in the last round over the last year. And so we just didn't want to ignore them. But, just like when we did a 1.0 and we did 2.0, when we get to 2030, 31, 32 and develop 3.0, we would obviously go back out and do an extensive round of community engagement that would pick some of those things up. But that's really why those are here, as they had been articulated in this last kind of round, and so we just didn't want to ignore them.
I appreciate it. I just wanted to kind of have that conversation quickly.
Along those lines, our life cycle improvement budget, is that separate from these SAVE dollars?
That's funded through PEPL, so completely separate from SAVE.
So when we think about the roof at Penn needs, we don't have to worry about spending SAVE dollars on that because
correct,
that comes from PEPL.
Okay.
So earlier tonight, there was mention of the Kirkwood partnership in classrooms for nursing and teaching. Are those on the list, or will that be coming out of SAVE, or where are we thinking that those monies will come from?
The
Like the
excuse me,
classroom, the
classrooms
Kirkwood
at the
classrooms.
CFI.
Yeah. Or
Yeah, you
is
guys have already
Kirkwood-
approved that construction. So
Yeah,
that
yes.
those rooms have been in construction. The attachment of Kirkwood has been more recent, Director Lingo, but you guys have already approved
Okay,
that.
thank you. Sorry for my negligence on knowing that I approved that. The past fall, I know there was a potential idea of daycare buildings being floated. Is that off the table because it would require some conversions of elementary buildings?
You
With the
mean-
re-envisioning discussions?
Well,
I mean, were you talking about like one of? I guess I'm not
Earlier,
following
like
daycare.
when we were like the preschool childcare facility. Thank you, Eliza. Whatever it might be called.
Yeah, I don't think at this time we're looking to increase capacity for childcare. Preschool continues to be a goal, but
Okay.
yeah, outside of BASP, no childcare at this time.
Actually creating the middle schools created capacity at the elementary schools for preschool.
Okay. So, all right. So, my thing is, and part of this is just for my own ignorance on what was going on and where the money was. This would have us still spending, say, what year of SAVE would future boards be able to start using? Is that 2047?
Yep, this would be through 2047, so fiscal 47.
So 28 would be the first year, right? Or 2020, or not 28.
48,
Yeah. So,
yep.
So 23 years. I mean, it's a long time. 23 years ago this week, I graduated high school. So it's like trying to think of the time perspective in there. And had I realized that this would leverage us out till 2047, back last July, I probably would have spoken up then. But I found out 2 weeks ago, and it was just like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that's how far out this would be. And I will probably be in the minority in this, but it would be, I would have asked then for for administration to start looking for alternatives and slow it down, identify the priorities and start with that first. I mean, part of the reason is first flexibility for other school boards. If we're spinning out till 2047, other school boards, unless SAVE and I'll get to that later, if SAVE gets extended, that's $36 million for 20 years of expenditures through SAVE. And that's not a whole lot of money for those boards to have to play around with, or not play around with, identify the goals within their community. And I mean, we've heard SAVE that will be extended. It's not a guarantee. SAVE has only been extended once. It was in 2020, and it was that time to from 2030 to 2050. That's because SAVE was invented in 2008. Before that, it was Silo, and those were in 10-year intervals. And we know in the background, SAVE is funded through 1% option sales tax. We also know that the governor in the background would like to reform income tax into a sales tax. Probably won't get covered in their last 2 years, but we know that's floated as an idea. When that kind of thing, it throws up a red flag, because how many percentage points, where is she going to find those percentage points? And then on top of that, private schools continue to lobby to be added to the SAVE financing. And if that is happening, then we have to share FTE with them. And next of all, the state is $900 million in the hole, and was one of only 2 states to decline in economic output, or one of 2 states to decline in economic output this past year. And those kind of holes in the budget are expected for another 5 to 10 years. At some point, the state will come looking for other monies, and I just don't necessarily feel in my thoughts that I can rely on SAVE to be extended from 2050 to whatever it would be to give those boards flexibility. Next is PEPL. From what I've noticed of PEPL, and we discussed it tonight, it's mainly life cycle. We know that property tax reform is coming next year. We know that it will lower commercial taxes and agriculture taxes when it gets through. What that looks like, we're not for sure, but that means less money coming to PEPL, right? That's less taxes, less money. So that PEPL money has to come from somewhere, and to be able to fill out the life cycle. So where does that come from? I don't know. I would suspect that it's our other area where we can pay for buildings. Then just the general obligation bonds, which are funded through a 60% property tax increase, or 60% or more supermajority of voters. Last one was passed at 65%, right? And probably one of my biggest fears, and this isn't necessarily to suck the oxygen out of the room, but I've been at birthday parties the past 3 weekends. All elementary people, right? Every birthday party I get asked, what is going to happen, including my daughter's 6th birthday party, what is going to happen to the elementary schools? I know that was asked a few meetings ago, maybe end of March, and we haven't gone back to it, but I have also was reiterated to me this past weekend in the farmer's market that if we touch the elementary buildings, I should not expect to see a go bond passed. So that is also floating in my background, in my mind, of, hey, why do we need to spend all that money within the next 5 years that we have for the next 20 years, or for the next 25 years? And for me, this isn't an arts versus sports or build versus anti-build. I want that money spent on buildings. Don't get me wrong. That's what I would prefer. But it's an issue that every dollar that we bond today is less flexibility tomorrow. It means less money for future building repairs and technology, fewer options when emergencies arise, a potential dependence on property tax increases if the community were to support that property tax increase through a go bond, and looking at future boards in decision and locking in the future school boards into decisions that they did not make. I mean, look around this room. 10 years ago was 2015. Gearing up for FMP 1.0, I'm sure there were discussions going on in the background. The vote was going to be 2 years later. I know Mr. Kurth was there with technology because I was in grad classes with him, but I don't know how many other people in this room were here. The board table is an entirely different board. You have a different superintendent, different deputy superintendent, and thinking about what they have for availability till 2050 if SAVE did not get extended. And that's kind of where I'm at on this. And I wish I would have known what I knew from 2 weeks ago last fall. And again, and I understand that students have come to us with their needs, but I also have to think of what are the other students' needs 10 years from now and what is going on there. So that's my statement, and thank you.
So looking at, one request is when this comes back before us in June, it would be helpful to have, if possible, all of Dwayne's little charts from previous FMPs just as reference. So then that people can see, I know you walked us through where we've been and where we're going, but it would just be really helpful, even for me, instead of having to dig through the documents, to have that right in front of me so I can say, okay, yes, this is all the elementary schools we touched in that year.
Oh, so even FMP 1.0?
Yes,
Okay.
I want you to go like the FMP cycle from 1.0 to, I don't know, 0, whatever we started with FMP. That would be great.
I got to remind you of something. I hope maybe you were here, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but when we did FMP 1.0, that back wall,
I know.
it was 14 foot long.
I know.
That
I
chart of all the
remember.
projects we did.
So do your magic.
Yeah, okay.
So we will.
No, it's rolled up somewhere. Nick, you remember all that?
We can gather those documents, but I'm glad you brought that up. I should have said this at the onset for folks that maybe go back and watch the video or have access to Diligent. The links in the presentation are to some of the previous iterations of 2.0. So we'll bring them for the board, but just for people that want to start looking at that before then to try to make it ease of access, we linked a number of those in the presentation, but we'll do that.
Yeah. And then in looking at your chart and the color code, yellow means that's when you're coming to us asking to spend money, or it will be on Appendix 9, because we're entering the design phase.
That's the project design. Yes, that's the project design phase. The
Meaning
yellow
we'll
gold.
see plans, or that's when you're going out asking for bids? I mean, what, remind me again?
Well, design means the bid process as well. The red is when we expect the actual construction.
So that's a point where, I don't know, we get to the West High Field House, and I know the design piece is next, and I can say, if I'm still here, no, that's not something that we should probably move forward with, or admin can come back based on whatever's happening with our numbers, with our district, that we're not gonna proceed with this. Instead, we're gonna move the playgrounds.
There's two critical times you'll have votes, right? One of them will be to approve a specific project, and the other one would be to vote to borrow the money. And then once we commit to borrowing the money, then we need to do the projects that we've borrowed the money for. And so what you don't see on there necessarily is you do see some information on cash flow about how we're managing construction projects. You don't necessarily see the financing or borrowing windows. That's what we'll work with Adam on, about when is the right time to buy the amount of funds, or to borrow the amount of funds available. But yes, your first question, President Malone, about when the project comes back, you'll see it in the design phase before we move forward with construction. You'll see, hey, this is the design for this specific project that we're going to then move forward to construct.
So you actually have two approvals, the design, as he pointed out, but also when we do the bids, we bring them back to you, and at that point, you can move forward or you can reject them. You know, that's another key time. So there's 2 points at which you can stop the project if you like.
But after we see the bids, we would have already borrowed the money. Is that not right?
Not necessarily,
Okay.
no. It depends a little bit on the scope. Sometimes we might borrow a certain amount of money that we expect is going to allow us to complete 5 projects. Sometimes we wouldn't, especially if it's a larger project or something like that.
And with our playgrounds, the outdoor classrooms, why is it, like, the last section of it is in, what, 2027?
I just wanted to spread the cost. I just did that to spread the cost out. It doesn't mean that the projects won't, they may be done sooner, but I was trying to help Adam with his cash flow.
So you could move it up?
Absolutely. If you had the money.
And just to follow up on what you said, President Malone, about being in Appendix 9, these won't be in Appendix 9, right? They'll be outside of Appendix 9 when we approve them?
Yeah, anything over that $2 million threshold, it'll have that one part of the process, Director Finch, where it'll be pulled out from just the Appendix 9 enclosures, and you'll have that approval. So if it's over the 2 million, yeah, it'll be outside of that.
For the whole project, not just like
Right, the
cost
project
to
scope.
design it?
Yep,
Okay,
exactly.
Great, thank you.
And then remind me, unless I missed it, Liberty High, didn't they ask for a little theater?
It's on there. We just, again, went back to we call it
Got
the
it.
Fine Arts Edition, not the specific
Well, the name changed, so.
concept.
The bid questions open up one thought in my mind, because we have several of these projects are equally distributed across the district, right? We have the $5 million fine arts per high school, and then the $12 to $13.5 million per field house. And I'm just, one thought, and I don't know if it's concern, like, let's say we get a field house in at West, I think that's first, and it comes in like $12 million, and then we go to the next one, and it's like City High comes in at $24 million. Is that a concern? Because, I mean, once the West is in production, it's like, okay, we can't really say to City or Liberty, no, you guys don't get a field house because your bid came in over XYZ threshold. That I guess would be my concern, and I understand the balancing out of the projects throughout the timeline, but what, any of your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to let Kurt address that one. Give him a chance to talk here, Dwayne, then you can.
Fine.
So we talked about the engagement that's happened already, and that was obviously prior to my time here, but I think it was Director Williams kind of asked the question. You kind of set a baseline, right? So you assume everybody's going to get 50 yards of turf, a team room, some bathrooms. You set a baseline. So the question you posed about going from 12 to 24, theoretically, you shouldn't see an increase that significant. Any other increase theoretically should just be inflationary or differences in materials, because as it works here with the 3 high schools, everybody should be getting the same model so that in 15 years, we're not coming back and saying, well, you got 3 basketball courts while we built turf, so now we want the 3 basketball courts that West got. So there is a model that you have to start with, and we'll start with the first one, and that once you get that one dialed in, then it translates to the other 2 campuses.
I guess if we, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, there's also the project contingency would help alleviate some of that.
And my one other overarching concern, if we go down this path, is making sure that there's community engagement with the area that lives around City High, because that will be a very large building going up on the back side of people's houses. So.
I just want to address something Mitch brought up in terms of providing for future funds for projects that may be needed in the future that aren't evident now. My approach, frankly, is that I have in front of me the need for field houses and performing arts spaces. It's very clear, it's very obvious, it's a very long process, and I think a very credible process has brought those needs to fore. Now, I'm not sure what the needs are going to be in 15 years or 20 years or so forth, but I am confident that the district will have resources to meet those needs. I think, Adam, you presented information at a recent meeting showing the amount of debt available to the district over the next several years. And as I recall, that amount is considerable.
And that would include both revenue bonding from Save and Pepple as well as general obligation bonding. But the district's borrowing capacity at this point is well over $200 million without raising our debt service limit any further. So.
All right. Okay. So to me, that's an assurance that I'm supporting what is needed now, and I'm anticipating that what may be needed in the future can be met by future boards.
Any additional questions or discussion items from directors? Anything that you need,
No,
Okay.
Thank you, and thank you for your support, and we're happy to come back and talk about. I think they're exciting projects, and yes, we do want the community excited about them and the constituents, and so doing things like renderings of what the spaces are going to look like, and getting the communities, not only today's high schoolers, but the kindergartners, right? My first grader, my preschooler, about this is the spaces you're going to have. We want those families involved in it too. So the more community engagement, I think, the better on these, and we appreciate you all supporting this forward. So if there's other things that the board would like to see on June 10th beyond some of the history around FNP 1.0, let us know and we'll try to pull that together. So thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent. Next up, we move on to our action items for tonight. The first one is the negotiated agreement for nutritional services. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the nutrition services negotiated agreement.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
Would be a yes vote.
Thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is the negotiated agreement for educational support personnel.
I move to approve the educational support personnel negotiated agreement.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Next up is the negotiated agreement for teachers.
I move to approve the teachers' negotiated agreement.
Second.
Before we take a vote, I will be abstaining from this, as I've done since I've served on the board. So just want to put that in the record. Board Secretary Coven, we are ready for a vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Abraham, Eastham, Istone, Finch, Lingo, and Williams voting yea, and Director Malone abstaining.
Thank you. Next up is the negotiated agreement for physical plant.
Move to approve the physical plant negotiated agreement.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
And the last negotiated agreement is for our secretaries. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the secretary's negotiated agreement.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
And our final action item for tonight is the 2024-25 Certified Budget Amendment. Is there a motion for the Certified Budget Amendment?
I move to approve, that we approve the 2024-2025 certified budget amendment.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. That takes us to our agenda setting for our June 10th meeting. Let me get there. We'll see the policies come back to us, our quarterly financial report, audit, and any discussion items, Superintendent Degner, that you had planned.
Sorry, making a list here. Make sure I got down what you said. You had mentioned already quarterly financial report and audit. They must be on that draft agenda. Cell phones data, we're going to come back and kind of close the loop on cell phones. FMP 2.2 or 2.3, excuse me, we'll be bringing that back for your consideration. We had those. You guys did a nice review of the policies that would come back at that time as well. So no, that's what I have for right now. I think you got everything on my list.
Director Williams?
Yeah, we should take that policy 203R1 off of the June meetings.
Yeah.
Right, that one we're gonna take back to P&G for July, right?
Yes.
And yeah, and
with the
number
400s.
6. Yeah, number 6, the extra service activities, that should get off both action item and policy review.
Any other items that directors want to make sure we have in the parking lot since June? We'll have a break between our June meeting and our July meeting. Yeah, okay.
President Malone, this is for the parking lot, definitely not for June. But I was wondering if we can get an update on restorative practices, what our buildings are doing to sort of intervene at the level of conflict before it gets to violence, where disciplinary action is taken, that type of thing. So just like a nice overview of an update on how our buildings are doing with the restorative practices.
Yep, we can do that one. Thanks, Director Finch.
Anything else from directors? All right, this is actually, I believe, our last official meeting of the school year. So those of you watching at home, in just a few short days, kiddos will be home for the summer. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Everyone gets home safely, and directors, see you back in the conference room.